Welcome to another edition of the Mind and Body Understanding podcast, presented by Jeff Pharion and the Foolproof Entertainment Network. Jeff, how's it going today?
It's going well. Mind and Body Understanding is very happy to bring on Patty Bauman today. We're talking about parenting in the pandemic, and we're going to talk about it from a few different angles. Patty is a registered nurse. She's actually a nurse practitioner, recently achieved that degree. She's the mother of two teenagers. She's a professional midwife. She's doing about everything you could possibly do within her. Patty, last I remember, I went and saw you in a concert recital for your undergrad degree, and here you are, all these degrees in nursing. Why don't you tell me how that all came about, how you became a nurse, and how that all happened?
Yeah, so I did, initially go to school for music, and 10 years later kind of changed my path entirely.
How do you go from music to nursing?
How do I go from music to nursing?
Yeah, how did you go from music to nursing?
I had my kids, and just the whole process of getting my prenatal care, and then going to the hospital and having my kids and seeing the nurse. That was the first time I ever was admitted to the hospital, and even saw that kind of experience. And I went, I think I'm going to do that.
Interesting.
So researched.
I've been teaching nurses at a nursing school, their English class, and most of them say it was the nurses who helped them in the hospital for whatever reason that influenced them to become nurses. That's interesting.
A lot of people I talk to that I work with have that same kind of process.
And then you started out as a regular nurse, an RN, and how did you progress that into nurse practitioner midwife?
So my first job, I worked in the ER. That was quite an experience.
I bet.
But I was always drawn to caring for the pregnant patients and the pregnant population that came in through the ER.
Yeah.
And then eventually got a job transfer and worked up on labor and delivery. I was a labor nurse for 7 years. And during that time, I went, okay, I'm ready to kind of take the next step. I want to be the provider rather than just the bedside nurse.
And so how do you describe the difference between just being a labor and delivery nurse and being a midwife?
So the labor and delivery nurse is at the bedside the whole time. They run their 12-hour shifts in the hospital, and they take the orders from the providers and execute those orders at the hospital. And you are providing that one-on-one care constantly your whole stay. Then as the midwife, you get to see that patient through their whole pregnancy rather than just when they're at the hospital. So seeing them in their office visits, it's a totally different environment.
So lots of people are using this instead of going to doctors for birth?
Well, so there's doctors in my office, but midwifery is something that there are more positive outcomes that we see from low-risk pregnancies having midwifery care than simply having OB care. And so, it's an option for women who aren't at high risk or don't have high-risk pregnancies to see a midwife.
I see. Now, how in the world are we going to turn this into a talk about psychology and all these things? Well, I've been thinking about this, and I thought of Patty immediately when I was thinking about what in the world do you do during the pandemic when you're a parent? And then how in the world do you bring a baby into this world during the pandemic? And I thought, who better to talk to about this than Patty? So let's talk about parenting first, Patty. Since you have two teenagers of your own, you are a single mom. I hope you don't mind me mentioning that.
Yeah.
And you even have the responsibility of your parents on top of your children, at least helping them. You don't take care of them, you help them. But let's talk about parenting and what happens here during the pandemic. I mean, how have you handled it? What's been the main issue as far as taking care of your children and having a regular, normal life and dealing with coronavirus?
So my kids are both teenagers, so I think in the pandemic situation, as a single parent, I'm lucky that my kids are teenagers because they can be a little bit more self-sufficient when it comes to all of the school from home.
Yeah.
And I think, but they can also be like, well, there's not really anyone in front of me that I have to be accountable to, so maybe I can just not do that. So that side of it has, that's what's been thrown more on mothers.
Yeah.
And on the parent is, they lose that extra accountability that they have when they see their teacher face to face. You're not handing your homework in directly to your teacher. You just click a button. And if you didn't do it, you don't have to click a button. Nobody's there to say, where's your homework?
No one's really paying attention.
Right.
No.
So,
They're not.
that's kind of increased that responsibility on
So,
me.
is that frustrating? Is that stressful? I mean, that can't be fun. I mean, you're basically taking over the role of roping them into doing their homework and getting things done school-wise.
Right. So.
I've heard that cheating
several-
nationally is up 73%.
Yeah, and
I can't imagine what it's up at my former high school.
these kids all have
can't either.
smartphones, and they know more about
the teachers
technology
do.
than their parents and their teachers.
Right.
So they can talk to each other all day long when they're at home.
No, I even heard
helping each
stories.
other out, getting.
I even heard,
you know.
heard stories that kid was flying a drone outside a smart kid's window to get his answers off his computer
Oh,
screen.
geez.
That sounds ridiculous.
I heard things. I don't know, but it just has to be frustrating. So, in tying in mental health to this, I'd have to think that because a lot of kids are frustrated, a lot of them are depressed because they're not seeing their friends. I imagine parents are frustrated and depressed because they're not seeing their friends, and their kids aren't seeing their friends.
Mm-hmm. A lot of
And they're
social isolation.
And they're trying, and speaking as a parent who had a kid home during everything until the last week or so, it's not great to work a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job while you also have to watch your kid.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy, it's stressful, and it goes vastly underappreciated, especially when only one parent's in the house because the other one's at school teaching. So
I had a child all online, and then beginning of February, checking on her while she's doing her schoolwork.
Right.
And you just see she's just staring straight at the screen, just mouth agape. And are you doing your work? I think I just read the same thing 5 times, but I'm not sure even what I read.
What you read, yeah.
There's that. I've been by myself trying to do this for so long.
I mean,
I'm young. I need more interaction.
medically speaking, can this cause more problem? Having kids do school online all day long than it's actually helping them learn? I mean, can it cause eye problems? Can it cause attention problems? I mean, what's your opinion of that?
7-year-olds aren't meant to stare at a computer screen for 8 hours a day.
No.
Not at all.
And I was hoping Lisa's, unfortunately, our she shed wisdom woman is not here with us this week, but I was hoping to talk to her a little bit about this because she had children who were in the transition from high school to college, and that's been extremely difficult from what I can understand because they're doing virtual visits to colleges, and the application process is way different, the interview process is way different, and it's you just don't know. And then, are you going to pay $70,000 to go to a high-end college and go online? Probably not.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I don't think that's happening.
I have some friends with new college students, and they ended up staying home, save the money of room and board, because all your classes are online anyway.
Right.
There's a certain college that has your future in mind here that's reaping the benefits of that
I'm sure.
because they're giving what they always give, and it's working out great. So who needs counseling more, Patty? Parents or kids? What do you think?
Well, I think probably both equally. But I think as kids go back to school and get back into the interaction and just social awkwardness of growing up,
Yeah.
that is going to need to be addressed more.
Okay.
And, kids forget how to do things in groups of people.
Right. Yeah,
You spend a whole year on your own doing whatever you want, behaving however you want, because
Right.
you're in your own house. You have to go back out in public. When you're that young, you forget.
well, that's a dynamic that I don't know that we're going to fully get back ever. I mean, I don't know that we're going to fully get back to total group participation in things. People might be leery of it, or there might be rules against it. We haven't seen what new school's going to look like yet. They're only kind of
They're just now getting to it. Like, schools just started going back all in full time broadly. Now, there are some schools that never shut down, especially in the parochial category, but
Sure.
a lot of public schools are just now going back to all in, at least here in Central Ohio. So, that started back like last week and the week before.
So you think social orientation is something that children could get help with? There's a lot of depressed children, from what I understand, in examining. I've had a few clients that come from that category. I've had more clients come in that were parents who were struggling, especially with their children, getting them to do their damn work. I mean, just getting them to function.
The struggle is real.
They're taking it as an elongated spring break where they just have to do online assignments on occasion just to keep their GPA above board.
As a parent, you go, how many more times can I tell you the importance of continuing to do your work?
Right.
I can't tell you this 5 times. It just goes in one ear and out the other. But then as kids go back, if you talk to them, they're open and can communicate with you. You see the anxiety.
Yeah.
Of even going back into that situation and the
Right.
fears of, am I going to get sick if I do this, or am I going to bring some sickness home? There are some real anxiety issues.
And what about parents, though? What do you think their main concern would be? Like, if they were seeking help, what would the main concerns be?
I've had a lot of moms come into my office with, increased depression, increased anxiety, either having trouble getting in with their primary care doctor or with a psychologist. People aren't taking a new patient, but they know they need help. They've been struggling to deal with work and change in work and working from home all the time, or losing their job, or having to quit their job because there's no daycare.
Yeah.
Dramatic increase in the number of patients that I've seen come in my office. Because I don't just take care of patients during their pregnancies.
Sure.
I take care of women from, 13 years old all the way till the end of life.
That's interesting.
So across the board.
How often do you have clients come in that have mental concerns? I mean, that's got to be all day long with new mothers, but what about, just in general, how often is that happening to you?
In general, when I'm doing yearly exams for people, I always, especially now, I'm always making sure I address that with the patients, and more. I mean, 9 times out of 10, somebody's saying, I definitely have a lot more anxiety than I ever did before.
Yeah.
My doctor increased my dosage, and the first thing out of my mouth is always, are you seeing a counselor? Are you talking to someone about it? Because that's just as important. Do you have somebody to talk to? Even if it's just your partner at home, or a family member, or someone at church, or anywhere.
I always
have somebody to talk to?
I always find when clients come in, they're new clients, and they're experiencing depression and anxiety because of this pandemic, that they don't feel comfortable talking to their friends and family about it, because they don't want to give a different impression, or they don't want to change the ideology that they've always presented for their family. They want it to be, I'm the rock, I'm the one that you can come to, but I'm really, this is messing me up, and I'm not feeling too good about it.
Right.
And how in the world are people bringing in new children, and how are they feeling? What's your?
Well, I can tell you, Jeff. That's generally how a baby comes into the world, especially during a pandemic, especially early on in the pandemic.
Well, I understand
there was nothing else to do.
I understand how they conceive the child, but I'm talking about at the end of the period.
The anxiety is through the roof
Yeah,
with a lot
sure.
of new mothers, especially the first-time mothers.
Yeah.
Because the hospital experience is different.
And I heard
And-
that childbirth is up. Is that right?
In my office, definitely.
I've heard just nationally it's
Yeah.
up. And so Mike's theory is correct. If people have lots of idle time, they may do some things and they may produce a child.
If
But
you get through the point where at the beginning everybody canceled their appointments, offices closed, people went to telehealth, so
Right.
people didn't show up for their appointments. So those who would have come for birth control maybe didn't.
does
And
that
then
mean birth
they come in.
control or abortions is way up too now?
Not necessarily. I mean, people are starting to come back to the office more,
Yeah.
and getting the birth control that they need, or, learning the other techniques they need to prevent pregnancy when that's what they want. But
So do they seem like it was all planned and they're happy, or do you see a lot more people coming in like, well, this just happened and we're dealing with it and so on?
yeah, a lot more unplanned
Yeah.
is what we saw. April, May, June, as people came in and found out.
So what's childbirth like during the pandemic? I mean, what's the difference between like maybe 2 years ago and now, as far as the procedure and all that?
Well, you used to have you could have your whole family in the waiting room while you were having your baby, and once everything is all cleaned up and baby's here, your whole family could come into your room and see you.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, at least in the hospital where I am, you have that one support person. They come in with you.
Yeah.
They don't get to leave,
So you choose one support
and they
person.
leave with you.
So whether it's the father or not, you choose one support person.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
they show up with you and they leave with you.
It
If they
could-
have to leave during your stay, they don't get to come back.
It could be the person's partner if they're having a different kind of birth. It could be
Mm-hmm.
whatever. What if it's, have you dealt with any adoptions where parents are adopting a child from another person?
We've had a couple instances with adoptions and with surrogacies, even, where the hospital is as accommodating as they can, and they generally will, if they have the space on the unit, they're not too busy, will be able to give the adoptive parents a room of their own.
Okay.
So they will have their own space.
So it's not quite like the latest episode of This Is Us, where
I don't know
the
if I've
dad
seen
is
that.
sitting out in the parking lot while the mom is with the surrogate, basically in the hospital.
So initially there was a fewer.
A little bit of that.
A little bit of that, but
Okay.
so they're opening it up a little bit more. Now the whole hospital gets one visitor rather than, it was only labor and delivery gets one visitor and end of life maybe, or if it's a minor,
Got it.
gets a visitor. But now the whole hospital systems are kind of realizing, okay, things are a little bit safer, numbers are better, and our patients need that support
Yeah, absolutely.
mentally. If you have a
Right. That was my next question was, what are the major mental health concerns for families bringing a new child into the world? What are the major ones?
The biggest thing I see is that anxiety and fear of, they know their babies are born with very low immunity to anything.
Right.
They want to protect their baby, and it can become sometimes even obsessive compulsive of cleaning and how do I protect my baby from everything that's going on? How do I protect myself? I've had patients who were afraid, should I just have a home birth and not go to the hospital? Because is it safe to go there? Am I going to get sick if I go there? Because they are COVID patients at the hospital.
Yeah.
No, postpartum for my wife after our son was born, hospital-borne infection, ended up in wound care for like the next month and a half, 90 days, like almost 90 days. And I think that was a risk before COVID in terms of giving birth at a hospital. I can't imagine going through that now.
Well, tell us a little bit about postpartum. And I know that's a fairly common. Is it fairly common? I think it's
Postpartum depression?
Yeah. What is that? Can you describe to the audience what that is? To me, what that is? 'Cause I've dealt with it once with a client, and I kind of have a good grasp of it, but I'd like you to clarify it from your perspective.
Postpartum depression is an onset of depression for women that can happen really mid-pregnancy through 3, even 6 months postpartum. A patient who may or may not have experienced depression before.
Is it just different chemical reactions that are happening because of pregnancy? Or is it related to thought process where the person's just anticipating not being pregnant anymore, or not having the baby inside them anymore, or whatever it might be?
So it can range anywhere from something like as, low end, low key, not to, discredit it or anything, as having the baby blues, being sad for a few weeks after you deliver, all the way to, patients with psychosis.
Sure.
Because as your hormone levels change and your blood levels change, you can develop chemical imbalance in your brain, and changes in those, reuptake in your brain that causes that imbalance where you need treatment.
How do you treat clients with that situation?
So, when we see patients 1 week after they have their baby, is when we do our first assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not our first assessment because we're checking in on them at every prenatal visit.
Yeah.
But, we don't wait till that 6-week post. It used to be you just had a 6-week postpartum visit.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only time you were seen after you had your baby. But we see them back in 1 week because we're seeing higher incidence of postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's when we assess. If I'm going to give you medication to help you treat it, I'm also going to recommend some kind of counseling or support group.
Okay.
Because medication can treat, yes, but you need to be able to talk
In the
and get through things.
one client that I've had in my career with postpartum, I suppose I may have met others who had it, but they just didn't bring it up. But this person came in with the lead of, this is how I'm feeling. The angle that I approached was, let's just work on you. Let's work on your own self-worth, your own self-health, your own self-esteem. Let's work on improving on you. And as you focus on yourself, not selfishly, but just as you should, exercising, reading, trying to do other improvement ideas, maybe getting involved with some sort of civic organization, doing things that are outwardly positive, then your mindset will change and your depression will, dissipate, and you will feel like, I feel good, I feel better. And then dealing with your child and however many other children you have,
Right.
hopefully makes it a little bit easier by how you feel about yourself. I always use the airplane example. You have to put the mask on yourself before you can put the mask on the person next to you.
Absolutely.
Because if you aren't secure in your own feelings and you're not secure in your own health, then how in the world are you going to help that child, or how in the world are you going to help anyone else? So that's just my thought on it. We've talked quite a bit. Where are we at time-wise, Mike?
About 25 minutes in.
All right. So this isn't going to be the longest of the shows. We'll probably have 2 shorter shows with Patty. But just want to ask her if she has any other parting words for this one, no pun intended. Do you have any other thoughts concerning children in the pandemic, mothering in the pandemic, or bringing a child into the world in the pandemic? Any final thoughts?
Sure. I would say if you're a mother during the pandemic, absolutely. Check yourself. Give yourself a good 20 minutes a day to evaluate how are you doing? How are you coping with all the changes in life in the last year? Are you taking the time to spend time with your kids, but to also do something for yourself? Are you seeking help if you feel like you're not quite to the level where you were before? If you have those symptoms of depression or anxiety, you're not wanting to be involved, or you just want to sleep all day. Even just feeling like you're tired and exhausted all the time can be a sign that you are having some depression issues.
Sure.
And seek help. Even if you go to the OBGYN office instead of finding a counselor, we can help you find what you need. talk to your kids to learn how your kids are feeling. Trying to get them to open up to you and realize, I was 13 once, but I wasn't 13 in 2020 during the pandemic.
Right.
So I don't really know what my daughter's experiencing unless I talk to her.
I think about that a lot, actually, because not just the pandemic, but just when I was 13,
The world was different.
We had no internet. We had no cell phones. we had none of this. I mean, so the fact that they have at least, it's a blessing that during a pandemic that they have all these modern technological advances that they can just sit here and be on screen with their teacher. That would have never happened 40 years ago, whenever I was a teenager.
I think what's interesting, though, on that front, and I actually pulled something out we've talked about on Do Fools Agree a couple of times, is David Houle has a book about, he's a futurist that's got a book about the 2020s just being the most disruptive decade in history. And he talks a lot about the fact that there are currently two realities that we're living in, and the pandemic has actually further split those two realities because you have the digital reality and you have the physical reality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, everybody is living in this digital reality, which, as we know, people generally put forth their best foot online. Like you're able to curate your own narrative in the digital space.
Sure.
And I think that actually exasperates any kind of depression, because what they see, because to your point, they're on social media, they're on the internet, they're checking all these types of things, they're seeing these perfect versions of people that they're putting out online.
Yeah.
And that can't be easy to deal with when you're in those kind of spaces.
Agreed.
I would say hug the people you live with,
That's true.
because we know that we're not getting human touch anywhere else.
It's important. I mean, and I'll take it one step further. Just hold someone's hand.
Yeah.
I mean, I hold my wife's hand in bed till we fall asleep, and
Aww.
it just makes us feel better. I mean, that's something
It does.
that
It's
works.
that human touch element, that physical element as a human being that we need in our lives.
Well, She Shed Woman, we missed you. Patty, thank you for coming on. Michael, thank you for all of your. Where can people find you, Patty? If you don't want to give the actual, but you can give a website
I'm happy
or something.
to. I'm at Westar, OBGYN, out in Westerville.
And as always, PharionCounseling.com if you're having problems here in the pandemic. Thank you for your time, and have a nice afternoon.
Thanks so much.